Hello, Chris. Can you hear me? Oh no. Hold on.
Brett,
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, hold on. Let me just turn everything up a little bit.
That's a real groovy headset you got there.
Oh, it's very cool. It does the job. That's all I know. It. I think it has a little bit of a flashback sort of thing to it. How are you today?
I'm very well, thanks.
Good.
I'm speaking to you from my sister's home in Fairfield, Connecticut. Where are you located?
Outside of Chicago.
Okay. Well, we had exactly a week ago we had that tropical storm come through here, and it knocked out the power. Power's back on here in this part of town, but where I live, still no power after a week.
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
So I've been doing all these Zoom sessions that relying on the kindness of my neighbors and my family to let me, use their Wi-Fi.
Well, that's a long time.
Yeah, a week is a long time, especially when it's really hot outside, and you know how it is. We get used to air conditioning and all these nice things like dishwashers.
Refrigerators.
Yeah.
Refrigerators that you don't, so you don't have to throw out all your food.
Yes, exactly.
That sucks. Yeah, we had a storm yesterday that apparently affected. Apparently, Chicago got a tornado yesterday,
Ah,
and yeah, and it knocked out some people's power. And I've been seeing notifications that they're not going to be restored until the 15th, which I thought was absurd until talking to you,
yeah.
because it's like modern era and everything. You would think it would be a lot faster.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one day they'll put all these power lines underground and it won't be such a big problem, hopefully, but
Hopefully, yeah.
not yet.
Not yet. All right. Well, let me just start by saying I finished the book last night, and it was a fun read. I will admit to being a fan of the bands and yours,
Uh-huh.
but I didn't really know there's not very many bands that I know like everything about.
Uh-huh.
There's some bands you just are you just know everything about because they're ever like the Stones or something like that.
Uh-huh.
Um, so it was really eye-opening to kind of hear about more about the formation. I knew about the formation in New York. It was CBGBs and all, that's where you guys got your start, but a little
Yeah.
more in depth about certain things. So that was really cool. And it was, I appreciated the no nonsense style. Basically,
Oh, thanks.
you weren't like over dramatizing anything. I felt, it felt very like, this is what happened. Here's my flaws, here's the band's flaws, but nothing blown out of proportion like some of these things can be, right?
Yeah. Well, I had, before I wrote the book, I had a lunch with Ian Hunter. You know Ian Hunter
I mean, I know
from
of Ian Hunter,
Montehoople?
you're right, but I don't know him. No.
Well, he lives in Connecticut, has done for a long time,
Okay.
and not too far, 20 miles away, something like that. And so we met together for lunch because we have a mutual friend. And um, I had met Ian before back in, he used to actually come to CBGB's and hang out in the early days with Mick Ronson
Uh huh.
and um, and other members of his band. But I always thought he was a real cool guy, but I never really sat down to talk with him until this lunch. And he wrote a book called Diary of a Rock and Roll Star.
Mm-hmm.
I highly recommend it.
Okay.
Uh, and I think there's a new epilogue maybe that he's written.
Okay.
But anyway, I said, Ian, I really like this book you wrote, and I wonder, do you have any tips? I had not even started yet, and so he said, well, Mike, all I can tell you is write in your own voice. So I thought, yeah, that's what Ernest Hemingway said. So I tried to write in my own voice, And you know, I'm naturally kind of an optimistic person. I think I have uh, I tend to be cheerful. Not
Mhm.
always. Once in a while, I get grumpy, but
Mhm.
but most of the time, I I'm cheerful. I have a positive outlook, and so I tried to convey that feeling in my book. I hope I succeeded.
No, I think so, and like I said, I think that even the negative aspects were stated in a way that weren't, like I said, they weren't over dramatized. It's like it's obvious that, and you know, not knowing not knowing much about David, your assessment at times felt oddly right with how what I do know of David.
Uh huh.
Um, who's obviously very talented and everything, but it is very strange to have to encounter these people that seem to have no sense of others. Um,
Yeah.
and it's a weird thing, and it probably entertainment is the best and also the worst place for people like this because it only accentuates and rewards that well bad behavior and this sort of behavior.
Yeah.
um and it's obvious that dealing with the record company at the point after Naked, um
Yeah.
that they put their stake out in him,
Yeah.
which I guess it's just surprising that to me, not that I should be surprised at 49 years old how anyone is, and considering um, our government right now, I shouldn't be surprised at the level of narcissism that rises to the top.
Yeah.
Um, but it was still surprising that he was that uh, unobservant of others, and
It was shocking all the time, and we always thought, oh, it's going to get better. He's going to realize, he's going to realize that. Well, how should I put this? He's going to come around and understand the value of the band and the value
right,
of the people that he's working with, but
right,
it just never happened. Uh,
yeah,
I mean, he admits now. He I've heard through mutual friends that he admits now that he made some mistakes
yeah.
and that he regrets them, but he's never told me he regrets them. And, uh, and but I had a very cordial email exchange with David this morning, and
Oh,
we still have much business together with
obviously.
licensing songs to various uh, TV shows, Netflix, films.
Yeah,
Uh, that's our main bread and butter these days,
right.
and so we still have to approve of things and discuss various things together. And it's interesting. I offered David. I got, by the way, I got a very nice email from Jerry Harrison.
Hmm.
Very complimentary. He read the book and he felt very good about it, and made me feel good because
Yeah,
the last thing I wanted to do was like in any way hamper the legacy of Talking Heads.
right.
So, but with David, I offered to send David a copy of the book, and David said, "Oh no, please don't," because if I read it, then people will. Then when people ask me what I think of it, I'll have to tell them. But if I don't read it, I can just say, "I'm sorry, I haven't read it."
Yeah. Which is, I mean, I gotta admit that's kind of cool. I mean, and the fact that you just communicated with them today, because
Yeah,
obviously the headlines, and I don't want to belabor talking about David necessarily, but the
yeah,
headlines are pretty much because it's not one of those explosive tell-alls. It's
yeah,
a very again, very matter of fact assessment of your life and career,
Yeah.
that's the juiciest, segment to people that need to
Yeah.
splash that all
The,
around.
yeah, tabloid newspapers, and even some of the newspapers that aren't tabloid newspapers, they love conflict, and they
Right.
love, uh, oh, he said here that David never looked him in the eye. Let's put that on the,
Right. Right. Right.
and,
Right.
and make it like it's some, evil criticism.
Yeah.
There,
No, I just felt like it was matter of fact. And I think if honestly having for someone that had gone through it, I think your rather mature rationality of the proceedings probably spoke less than maybe your feelings were at the time, but because of years have passed
yeah.
and age and wisdom and things I'm starting to wrestle with, age and finally developing
Uh,
some wisdom.
you're a spring chicken.
I know. I'm just saying that I'm getting. We have kids about the same age, which is funny.
Oh,
Um, uh,
you got
but
started early.
yeah, he's almost 30, and just the idea that you look at these things and as long as you're not consumed by them, you're going to be able to say how things happen without not so much bias but bile.
There is a sort of cult of David Byrne, people who, with good reason, really admire David and have been profoundly affected by his skills as a lyricist and as a performer and as a songwriter. So there is this cult of David Byrne that's very, shall we say, in denial about some aspects of his life and probably some aspects of their own lives. But listen, to them I say, to those people who think I was being in any way overcritical or unkind, let me just say that I was there.
Right.
These are my experiences. I'm recounting them for posterity because nobody else is going to do it.
Right.
Nobody else is going to write this except for me. So there.
Well, I would say that people involved in the band have the right to speak about their experiences more than
Hell
anything.
yeah. Talking Heads was such a wonderful experience for me. And yes, I regret that we're no longer together, but I'm very grateful that I ever had that experience at all in my life. And I'm so happy that the band, when I hear Talking Heads music, it still sounds hip. It still sounds, as Dr. Evil would say, it still sounds with it. And, I have much to be thankful for.
No, absolutely. And I think you're right. There is a certain quality, unlike, some artists from the time where, it does seem, some artists seem like stuck in their time, but I feel like, yeah, you're absolutely right. It is. I listened to Sirius First Wave a lot, and you guys are on there a lot.
Yeah.
You guys, Tom Club is as well. So, I mean, so Talking Head songs in particular stand out because, oddly enough, the song, I mean, it's one of your later songs, but Nothing But Flowers really has not aged at all.
Yeah, it sounds
which is a strange thing. Some of David's music from the 90s, I think, sounds a little more dated, oddly enough. But and this, I'm not a person bashing David either. I think I wanted to see. I was gonna go try to see his show that he did with all the musicians, walking around, and he had that whole design and getting to see it on Saturday Night Live, a version of it was really cool, I thought. And I think I will admit to admiring his ability to stay current, stay moving forward as far as musician and artist,
Yeah.
which so many people can't do. They get stuck in perhaps a certain time, and they keep putting out records perhaps, but they go on on the reunion shows, and that's cool too. I'm not knocking that, but there is something to be said for somebody that like Lou Reed was able to keep doing something different till the end. I mean, hate it or not, his collaboration with Metallica was probably one of the craziest things ever produced.
Oh man. Yeah. Lulu.
Lou, and it's odd that because in the book, you talk about Lou, and Lou and David, I kind of see on the same wavelength as far as intellectual artists.
Uh-huh.
But I was surprised to find out how kind of warm and different Lou was from my image or your experience with Lou,
Well, he had a couple different sides.
Yeah.
Depending, I think, on what drug he was on,
Okay.
or whether he was sober. Because
Yeah.
later on, he became sober later
Yeah.
in his life. But
well, he probably got on correct medication for his mental health issues too.
yeah, that's very possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, he had a tender side, and he also had a very acerbic, cutting side. So you could be the recipient of either of those.
Yeah.
But we had great admiration for Lou, and up until his final days.
I was blown away by the fact that a friend of yours from back home in Kentucky ended up becoming one of his best friends.
Yeah,
that was mind blowing.
Yeah, it was very. Well, that particular guy is also sadly no longer alive.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Sam Dryden. He ended up being the head of I don't know what the actual title was, but the top guy at the agricultural wing of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Wow.
And he grew up on a little farm in Kentucky.
Yeah.
So he knew agriculture from when he was a baby. But yeah, he was one of Lou's best friends. He and his wife and Lou and Laurie Anderson used to go on vacations together because neither of them had children,
Yeah.
They would go to these exotic places, and Lou would often complain that something wasn't to his liking, like the pillow, or the guacamole.
For some reason, the idea of Lou eating guacamole is alien to me, but that's still cool.
Yeah.
There should be a book, stars doing things you wouldn't expect them to do, and one should be a drawing of Lou eating guacamole.
Yeah, so funny.
David Byrne having a warm conversation with someone.
Well, occasionally it happens.
Yeah. A broken clock is right at least 2 times a day.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Oh, I had something. Oh. Well, let's talk about. You've produced a lot of stuff over the years too. I mean, I just watched 24-Hour Party People recently, and I did not realize that you had produced that disastrous album that they have at the film, that you and Tina worked on it.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge Mondays fan, but I know that their reputation is insane, and I didn't realize how insane the movie did. Calm things down comparatively to what actually happened.
Well, I was kind of grateful that Tina and I were not depicted in that movie in that particular scene, but yeah, that was one of the wildest experiences of my life, being in Barbados with the Happy Mondays, and like the very first day of recording, the guy who's the dancer for the band.
Yeah.
He doesn't even play on the records, but Bez, he's
Yeah.
the maraca shaker.
He was the guy. He was basically the hype man.
Yeah, Bez was Eddie. We were at Eddie Grant's Blue Wave Studios, and
Yeah.
the Stones had recorded there, and Sting had recorded there. It's real cool, and it's out in the middle of a huge sugarcane plantation, I guess you would call it. And so there's nobody around for miles, really. You go back a dirt road to get to the studio, and it's residential. That's where Eddie's family lived. And so anyway, the first day of recording, we were just setting up all the gear. Bez he had a rented Jeep, with no convertible, with no top. And he was doing donuts in the sugarcane field. And he flipped the Jeep, and it landed on his arm, nearly severed it. And he was lying there screaming.
Oh, I can imagine.
Some of the studio team went out and got him and carried him inside to the reception area, where Tina was holding his arm together, because it was just flopping around.
Yeah.
And bleeding as well.
Yeah.
And so, that was day one.
Yeah.
And that it just got crazier and crazier.
Well, the trouble started back in England when he dropped all of his methadone. So it's like
see, we weren't prepared for that. No, we knew they were a successful band that had been, that was signed to Factory Records, and
right.
Tony Wilson. We were great admirers of Tony Wilson, and we actually knew him, and we thought, oh, this will be great. We'll go down to Barbados. We'll have a really great time. But we didn't know that Sean was a heroin addict.
Yeah.
And that when he dropped he had a month's supply of methadone, and he dropped it on the floor in, I think, the Manchester airport. And according to what I heard, he was seen licking the methadone up off the floor. When he arrived in Barbados, he was quite sick with withdrawal.
Yeah.
And he discovered crack. The whole reason we were in Barbados was there was no heroin there.
Yeah.
But they didn't know there was loads of crack. So Sean started in on that, and he just didn't stop smoking.
But that's a testimony of a true addict that can basically replace a downer with an extreme upper.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just insane. And I love that story when you were writing about it. You're talking about how Tina was the only one that was cool and collected during that incident with Baz.
Yeah, she kept it together.
And
and you know what Bez did? He came back from the emergency EMS people came to get him, and they took him to the hospital, and he was treated, and he came back with this great big, it looked kind of like the Brooklyn Bridge on his arm. It was his arm was all bolted together and held in place.
Yeah.
So he couldn't do any more damage to it. And then before that had been removed, he actually went out on one of those, those banana things that gets towed behind a motorboat, and you ride on it on the back. And he actually went out on one of those things and broke the damn arm again.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And of course, Sean said, Bez, give me your painkillers.
I gotta come down from this crack. My God, just that whole story was insane. How most of the guys didn't know how to play instruments, and it just I remember the scene in the movies. They go back and Tony's trying to basically salvage Factory, and I don't know how much of this is true. By playing the tapes of the new Mondays album to try to sell the company. and there's no vocals on it. And then it gets revealed that he basically doesn't have any contracts, which even in the 1980s and 90s, how anyone could not have contracts
I
is
know.
absolutely insane.
Well, he was a unique individual,
Yeah.
Tony Wilson. He was a real artist himself, you know.
Yeah. Well, I understand the philosophy of it, but the basic idea is that you got to have contracts. I mean, like the
Yeah.
artist has to have a contract, the label has to have everybody has to be contractually obligated in some way, so everybody knows their place,
Yes.
or you don't have those troubles, But
Yeah.
that's why there's lawyers and managers and all sorts of things. Um,
Yeah.
in terms of the business, now that I brought that up, how do you feel you were treated business wise during your years as a Talking Heads member and then producing? And do you feel like because I know there were some issues with crediting, and I don't know how much of that ever got resolved.
We kept. Well, with the credits, it was just a situation where we thought it was resolved, and
right,
then we ran up against it again on the next record.
right,
And I think the only record it didn't happen on was Speaking in Tongues.
uh-huh.
We didn't have any credit issues there.
Okay,
And also maybe on Naked. I don't think we had any credit issues on Naked. But
pretty much every other album.
yeah, pretty much every other album. Although, actually on Little Creatures and True Stories, those are songs that David had demoed.
Mhm.
Those were two albums that he had demoed the songs, and a rough sketch like it with a beatbox and an acoustic guitar,
Right.
and then the band would make it into a whole song. And I mean, it was just one of those things where I think that David didn't understand where he stopped and other people began.
Right. Well, it seems to be that, and not to get back into him too much and not to belabor the point, but it just well, I only say that because I wanted you to know that I'm here to interview you, not to talk primarily about David.
Yeah.
But I think it's the perception, if I'm an amateur psychologist, so forgive me, but it's the idea that his perception was he was the one, and therefore everything he did was perfectly fine because he was the one.
Yeah.
And he definitely seems to have had tunnel vision. And, we talked about it. I mean, just a general lack of appreciation or acknowledgement of other people.
Yeah.
So then that could be, as you suggest in the book, perhaps a spectrum sort of issue.
Yeah, I have to be very careful when I talk about the spectrum because in these woke times, there are people that take offense to anything you say
right
about anybody who may or may not be on the spectrum.
Right.
So let's just say that it's a real thing, and it's not something that I made up in my imagination.
Right.
But David is just one of many very interesting characters in this book.
No, I agreed.
There's so many others.
One thing I can't believe, and I wish that there's a certain moments in time I wish I could go revisit. Moments of time that I had, maybe I was alive, but I had, I was here in Chicago, so I wasn't in New York. I have a friend, Jesse Mallon, who's a musician.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I don't
and he always, he's always talking about, because he started going to CBGBs and stuff as a kid. He talked about how he went to see Johnny Thunders when he was like 14 or something. So he's always talking to me about, what it was like back then and stuff like that. And I couldn't imagine going to a club like that in that neighborhood of New York when I was a teenager. But just the idea of living in that area, which is now all upscale. I mean, CBGB's is a Varvatos store, for God's sake. You know, part of
Uh-huh.
the Mickey Mouseification of New York that happened under Giuliani.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, do you look back at that time and go, "Oh my God, I can't believe I not only lived through that, but actually lived in that environment"? Or was it just like just part of the thing you did? You know, and like you didn't really think much about it.
No, I thought about it. I I found that loft that we lived in. I write about this in the book. I looked in the New York Times industrial real estate section on Sunday,
Yeah,
and I went to see a lot of lofts. It took a while, and then I finally found this one, which I knew about CBGB's. I knew something was happening at CBGB's, and this place was only 3 blocks away,
yeah,
3.5. So I thought, wow, that'll be the right place to be.
yeah,
And other friends of ours were living around there, and so I knew that I would, have some neighbors that were friends, and but it was rough. It was kind of gruesome sometimes,
yeah.
and in the summertime, the smells. Woo!
I can imagine.
But these experiences build character, and,
I would agree. Yeah,
and I mean, now I live in a very nice, you know, sort of country type place, and with trees and ducks and geese and pond and everything. But
yeah,
somehow I still miss those early days.
yeah,
I don't miss not having a bathroom, or a shower, but I miss the camaraderie and the excitement.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's the idea that you were doing something and you were starting something that was exciting, not only to you, but you were starting to get the idea from other people that they were excited by it as well. And that's, and it's also from a time when, yeah, there were a lot of magazines and stuff, but media wasn't like it is now. So there was still this ability to kind of surprise and inspire awe in
Yes.
people, or
Yeah.
feel inspired and feel awe in certain things that I think most of the time nowadays we're kind of jaded a bit because it seems like everything's been done, you know.
Yeah. Well, now we're assaulted I mean, for years now. Every day we're assaulted with rock and roll music or dance music or all types of music. Just it's everywhere. It's in the on TV. It's not the rarity that it was
Yeah,
in the 70s.
yeah. Well, that's why I mean I've watched and this goes to talking about New York back then too. I've watched Mean Streets, Taxi Driver, and Cruising with Al Pacino in the last month or so. And, you know, Mean Streets was kind of like the movie that started putting rock music heavily as,
Ah, yes.
needle drops as they were, I guess, had they been called. But just the idea of the way the city looked in that time.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't get much better until the 90s, really.
Yeah, that's true. We I went to see Taxi Driver right after I think it came out in the fall,
uh,
and we had just moved to New York.
yeah,
Maybe it was the spring, and we had been there for 6 months or so. But I thought I looked at that movie, and that whole scene in the East Village with Harvey Keitel and
yeah,
Jodie Foster and all that. And I thought that was our neighborhood,
yeah, yeah.
I thought, God, what have I done? You know, I moved right into this, but,
Yeah.
but it wasn't so bad. It was kind of,
Well, the thing is, everybody's alive.
yeah,
So, that
yeah,
from the band, at the very least.
yeah,
Um, and it's really, it's really amazing. And I had forgotten until I read it. I just finished the book last night, so I got to the end when you guys were inducted. I forgot that you and the Ramones were inducted on the same year, and that yeah, after the induction in like the next year, all of the original members were gone. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
that was crazy.
yeah. That's most unfortunate.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um, that was just one supremely unlucky band, basically.
yeah, they were one of the greatest bands of all time, you know. But I don't know. I mean, three of them died of cancer.
Yeah.
One of them of a drug overdose.
Right.
You, I now I can kind of understand the drug overdose, but why the other three all got cancer on or about the same time? I'm not sure how
It's
that.
odd.
Yeah, maybe it was just being cooped up in that van. I mean, you know, Johnny would never let them travel in a tour bus like
Right.
comfortably. They had to be in a van, you know, sleeping, sitting up, listening to the baseball game.
Did you ever feel like you ended up kind of becoming friendly with Johnny? Because your book definitely underlined what I had already known. I grew up listening to bits and pieces of Howard Stern when he was broadcasted in Chicago, and the fights between Joey and Johnny on his show were infamous. So I knew Johnny was kind of a dick, but
Yeah,
I didn't real. And also the odd fascination of a Jewish man with Nazism was also very weird.
yeah.
But your book really kind of details that he was a very unpleasant person to be around. Did you ever kind of find a way to become friendly with him?
You know, towards the end of his life, yes, and actually before not even that. Actually, way before the end of his life, we did this tour in 1990 called "Escape from New York,"
Uh,
and it was Tom Tom Club, Jerry Harrison, Debbie Harry, not Blondie, but Debbie Harry,
yeah.
and the Ramones.
Okay.
And we toured America and Canada,
Yeah.
and it was a long summer tour, good 6 weeks, and we Johnny became kind of friendly during that.
Yeah.
Uh, he he had. I wouldn't say he was actually a nice guy, but he was nicer than he used to be.
I think I considering the description of him in your book, if he warmed up at all, it would probably be a drastic change.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
just sounded like, I mean, he just sounded like, and there was that horrible incident where he thought Tina was his girlfriend and was ready to start doing something to her. And
yeah,
thank God that not that it's any better that he did something to his girlfriend, but
yeah,
that
yeah.
he
That was
could have just hauled off and hit Tina, which would have been
it was a
awful.
very difficult situation.
Yeah. And back then too, people dealt with things a lot differently. You kind of, you know, today things would be done differently with a situation like that. They'd probably have the guy booted or something like that in modern times. But uh, back then, that a lot of behavior was kind of not so much excused, but kind of like, okay, look, we'll try to move on from this.
Yeah, yeah. It was a sort of a no-win situation with Johnny,
Yeah,
and the abuse. But you know, the rest of the band was great, and
yeah,
we really had a good time with them.
yeah. Um, what because, and I apologize if I don't know, but what things have you been working on musically over the last several years? Have you been kind of
Oh,
keep taking it easy, or have you been
well,
working on
I've been
stuff?
working on this book, you know, for
Yeah.
the past 2 years. Before that, we were doing some touring with our band Tom Tom Club,
Okay.
and you know, we toured Europe and America and Japan, and uh, we haven't done any new music for the past couple of years, and I'm thinking it's probably time that we do. But
Yeah.
now Tina's working on a book, and
Okay.
maybe I'm going to be working on a second book,
Okay.
completely different subject. So, but we still have the music in our blood, you know.
Yeah.
So we'll at some point we'll get back. Sadly, nobody's breaking down our door for a new Tom Tom Club
Oh,
album.
that sucks.
It's kind of, you know, people in our position, it's like, I mean, even Paul McCartney, he does a great new album
Right.
and nobody wants to know about it. They just want to hear
Yeah.
the old hits, you know?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it is.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll go out one more time and play the hits.
Yeah.
Uh,
But you should do new stuff. You know, I think you guys got it in you. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, Tom Tom Club was a band that I do peripherally because of the video on MTV. And then the other song I really knew in the 80s was when you because you were associated with Jonathan Demme was huge. David and Jerry were both on the Something Wild soundtrack. And then you guys were on Married to the Mob with Devil Does Your Dog Bite. That's the title, right?
Yeah.
Which is a great, that soundtrack is probably hands down one of the best soundtracks ever put together. I mean, Sinead's on there. Brian Eno does the Otis Redding song, which is a really cool version. It's the first time you heard the song that ended up becoming a huge deal in Demme's Silence of the Lambs by Q Lazarus.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm afraid I'm sort of running out of time.
No, I knew that. I was about to wrap up anyways. That was just your reminder,
Okay.
huh?
Yeah, that's my reminder. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. No, well, I appreciate you taking the time. I good luck with the book. I loved it, and I'm hoping that I could come out and see you guys play if you do tour with Tom Tom Club.
Thank you very much. What's your real name, by the way? I know
Brett.
Brett. Okay.
Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna sign off using something new. I'm a big Godfather fan, so I've decided this is gonna be my sign off from now on. I am going to leave you now because I know you are very busy, to quote Luca Brasi. So Chris, yeah, thank you very much and good luck and many, many more years and much more music from you.
Thank you very much. All the very best.
Thank you. All right, take care.
Cheers.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.